Thank you so much for joining us for this special edition of All Angles Investigates. And today, All Angles is investigating paternity fraud. Now, joining me in studio, we'll be hearing from them a little later in the program. We have Professor of Gender, Sexuality and Psychology, Professor Karen Carpenter. Also with us, social anthropologist Dr. Herbert Gale, and obstetrician, gynecologist and social commentator Dr. Michael Abrams. Now, before we hear from our guests, so Giovanni Dennis has this special report.
She might be fooling around with two men. She go play hokey pokey to find out which one is the better daddy, which one is the better candidate. So it's like Russian roulette. Is it Tom, Dick, or Harry? Which is the better father? So it doesn't really matter who is the biological dad, especially in this economy. Like, people can hardly afford to live.
Paternity fraud. A mother telling a man he fathered a child knowing it's not true. In Jamaican, it's called giving a man jacket. The word alone stirs up strong emotions.
I think it's diabolical, the way women just throw kids to men who aren't really the father. And I think they should go under harsh punishment.
And yet, it seems widespread. 47% of Jamaicans who used the services of the company 876 DNA test in 2024 received an adverse result. In fact, the crude percentage is higher. 52% of all DNA tests at the company returned adverse results. Some were done by Jamaicans in the diaspora and could not be assigned a parish, and so the company adjusted the numbers down. Either way, that's an adverse result for 1 in every 2 tests.
Well, the number is extremely high. So we've heard higher numbers before, but I think that this is the closest to an accurate record that we probably have of the issue in Jamaica because of the scope and operation of 876 DNA tests. So we have 64 locations across the island. We're in all 14 parishes and most major townships. The people who do DNA testing in our facilities come from all over Jamaica.
Teran Dewar is CEO of 876 DNA Test. The tests done were not just by fathers or presumed fathers, but also by relatives.
Paternity testing is when you test a child against a father. Relationship testing, you can test an aunt or an uncle. That category of test is called an avuncular DNA test to determine whether or not the child is the father's child. So you test the father's brother or sister. You can test the father's mother or father, which will be the child's grandparent. You can do a grandparent test. You can do siblingship tests. So the adverse result is a catch-all phrase we use to say we expected you to be related and you're not.
It's important to explain that this doesn't mean that 1 out of every 2 men in Jamaica is the victim of paternity fraud. It means that 1 out of every 2 tests done by this company had an adverse result. But there has been intense, widespread reaction to the new data.
Sometimes them don't really know. We should some of them know, them wicked enough, them know. We should some innocent, them don't know, say, is the next man's child. To when the child start to grow now and start to show features, then them realize, so there is a problem is here.
It's difficult to get people directly involved to speak.
We've been speaking so far with over a dozen people, either directly or indirectly affected by paternity fraud. No one wants to speak about this because of how difficult a subject this is to confront. We finally found someone who has agreed to share his story with us, who has been directly affected by paternity fraud. We're now on our way to St. Thomas to speak with him.
Driving to St. Thomas typifies driving anywhere in Jamaica. Parts of the road smooth and developed, much of it bumpy and uncomfortable. Almost as uncomfortable as openly speaking about being a jacket in Jamaica. Port Morant, on the outskirts of the capital Morant Bay, is the setting for our story. It's where Errol Scott grew up. He always felt he was different from his 4 brothers and 1 sister.
I recognize I was short. Most of my brothers then were tall because mommy has 7 of us, 1 girl, 6 boys. I was the 3rd boy for mommy, but when I discovered the first child for my father, I recognized that I was not from this stock.
He ignored whispers he was a jacket all his life until he was 40 years old in the year 2000. By now, the man who fathered him had died. He was and still is an ordained pastor.
One Friday, I went to Morant Bay. My wife was working at Morant Bay Parish Library then, and she worked with a woman by the name of Yvonne. I don't remember her surname. And Yvonne said to me, "Oh, you come into the library?" And I was calling her today, Scotty, and you never answer. So something clicked in my mind. Could this be the brother they said that looks like me?
But he still had to be sure. This man just so happened to be religious as well.
He invited me, that young man, because I knew him from Norris, you know.
The man who you found out was your brother?
Yes, man, I knew him from Norris.
You knew him from before?
Yes.
Long time?
Yeah, but two man look like man. Me never put it, say he could be my brother. So when he called me now, he said he's having a convention. And where he was pastoring is a place in St. Thomas, right in St. Thomas here.
So this man himself is also a pastor?
Yes, he's a pastor.
The man's sister used to watch Mr. Scott preach for years.
They used to see me come and preach at churches, and they would say, "Jesus Christ, what a man look like, Daddy."
Then came an invitation to speak at a convention.
When he invited me to the convention, something clicked in my spirit. Is it that he's inviting me for his wife and children to see me and to ask some thought-provoking question? After the meeting, we exchanged number, and I was saying to myself, why he's so interested in getting my number? But I didn't say anything to him. But there and then, Giovanni, trust me, the Holy Spirit told me, this is your brother.
This is your brother?
Yes. So when I got home, as I got in, my phone rang, and he said, "Mr. Scott." I said, "What, Mr. Coleman?" He said, "Me have something to tell you, you know." And I prayed to him in saying, "You want to tell me so we are brother?" And him started crying.
He started to cry?
He started to
cry. What was your reaction?
Well, tears well up my eyes too.
He had always dismissed the idea that his biological father was not the man who raised him, until now. He immediately inquired whether he was still alive.
So we asked him, man, that is a live man. And my sister, them may want trouble, you know, because them say, it happened a long time, you know, if you go and trouble the man. But to me see you now, I say, a death stamp for papa. Me say, fly or fly low. Me have to carry in the family.
They planned to meet up the following day. Mr. Scott didn't sleep that Friday night.
I don't think I slept as I normally do for the entire night because the anticipation was great. So when I got up the Saturday morning and prepared meal, the time he told me that he was coming, he came about 2 minutes after the time. And when he drove up with him, he said, "Come on, Mr. Coleman. I hope he'd cook food early morning." And so we asked him, man, and the way he laughed and talk, we say, "Yes, this is my stock."
Because finally, he saw his features in someone else's face. It was more of the same when he reached the house in Cheswick.
And my sisters actually saw me, and the way they laughed, you know, the joy, the vibes, the camaraderie, you can see that
the DNA
is that close. Man, it's like they knew me a long time. They never even want me to leave the yard.
And then he met his father.
I can't recall seeing him from a distance, but the first time in close proximity, and I hugged. And he didn't cry, but I cried.
You cried?
And when I look at him, just how my nose stay, the way he laugh, the way he see things, I said, this is my father.
But then, a myriad of questions swirled in his head, along with a myriad of emotions, not all pleasant.
Having hugged him and felt elated, and like that feeling a bit, I start to think now, like I feel like a slight anger, like what would it like, because my brother started to tell me how he taught them to swim and catch fish together, and I was imagining what would it be like to be brought up with him.
So, why did his father stay away for 40 years?
My father told me that my mother said, leave the boy alone and don't mess up the boy head because it happened a long time already. Make it just slide. So my father apologized to me, say, I could have come and see you a long time. But my mother, can't me tell you, my mother wasn't a simple woman. You know, my mother, like, she rules men. Yeah, like my mother run things in a relationship.
Yeah.
If my mother said, this is B, you can't tell her when you say, I see.
Having gone through the euphoria of meeting his father, he felt anger building, but not toward any of his parents.
No, just anger within myself. It wasn't directed to anybody. Because having spoke to my father at length, asked him why I'm just knowing you. And he explained, I believe he not coming to see me was really justifiable, knowing that my mother, because maybe my mother would have even told him, you know, I'd do something to him for him not to come. I wouldn't say I was angry at mommy, but I was disappointed at my mother.
So, what was the story of how his mother and his father got together while she was in another relationship?
My father and the man with whom my mommy lived, the father of my other sibling, were very good friends. But him couldn't dance. And my father was a roots man, dancer, innovative, and he was amazed by it profession. And apparently, my mother now is a sporter. So my mother used to go to dance. And I was told that he was the one to whom that man delegated the responsibility to take my mother. So him and my mother ride, go dance.
So Mr. Scott trust Mr. Coleman
Yes,
to my wife
that's
go
what I'm
dance.
saying. I mean, wife then.
Was his girlfriend?
He girlfriend. So like
My virgin said,
he
no,
virgin man. So, like in Rome, but if that never happened, I would not be here. You understand?
Here's how it happened.
Him say, John, you know, so no woman a Chiswick, where you love. And my father in a response say, you me love. You know, so me know me on camera, but me have the same thing. So I came peace and get me. And he must say, no, man, me get up from bed, man. I say, then if mama said to you, you me love, I want to come over from came peace and I was a night. That the response we want, you know, so mama like a long time. So it was a big laugh for the family.
But at the time, it was no laughing matter when the man who raised Errol found out Errol was not his biological son. Following her infidelity, his mother's partner, Mr. Scott, was determined to harm the man who impregnated his spouse. But his mother made them relocate from Chiswick, where they were originally from, to Port Morant. None of the children knew what had happened.
Because having left Chiswick, it safeguarded my father. Because I heard the man say he's going to kill my father, you know, for what he did.
Who? That's Mr. Scott?
Yes.
You heard him say that?
No, man.
You hear about it?
Yes, I heard about it.
Armed with his new information, Pastor Scott confronted his mother the following day.
When I met my brother, I went to my mother and said, Mama, live with me. My father is alive. And my mother hesitated for about a minute and said, no, the man who dead are your father. And I said, Mama, I meet a brother last night at a convention. If that man is not my brother, me not have any brother. And me I go see me daddy tomorrow morning. And she said, oh, okay. So having told her the Friday what I would have done the Saturday, I went the Sunday morning to pretend as if I went around here to have a bath for her to ask me, did you go and see the man? But me I mill around and she not asking me. I went down the bathroom twice, Giovanni, and turned on the pipe like their bed. And she not asked me, I come up back. And then me she clean her and I said, Tony, you go see the man yesterday? I say, yes, Mama. How him look like? I say, Mama, if that man is my father, and my mother broke down and start to cry.
Did you cry at that point?
Yes, and I cried with her and I hugged her and I told her, I said, I commend you for your wisdom.
In fact, Errol Scott says the man who raised him never treated him any differently from his other siblings, even after he confirmed he was not his biological son.